So almost a year ago, I made a retrospective video for Banjo Kazooie, and at the end, I mentioned how I always heard the follow-up game, Banjo Tooie, isn't as good. A lot, and I mean a lot of people, told me it wasn't bad, but just a little bit different from Banjo Kazooie. At the time of that video, Banjo Tooie wasn't out on the Switch, and I've never owned an Xbox in my life. But in October of 2024, everything changed. I wasn't exactly sure what to expect from this game, so I tried to go into it as unbiased as possible. The game takes place 2 years after the events in Banjo Kazooie. Gruntilda is still stuck underground and Cucko is trying to free her. One day while Banjo, Kazooie, Mumbo, and Bottles are playing cards, Kazooie swears she sees Gruntilda outside. When everyone else takes a look, they see nothing, so they assume Kazooie is a bit delulu and just saw a shadow. Suddenly the ground starts shaking, and we can see a drill emerging from the side of the mountain. Out comes 2 witches, stating that they need to find their sister, which is obviously Gruntilda. The 2 sisters use a magic spell to lift and destroy the rock, allowing Grunty to finally be free. Except, when Grunty rises from her slumber, she looks a bit off. She's pale and has lost weight, apparently. Anyway, Mumbo sees this all go down, and runs back to tell Banjo and Kazooie the tea. The only thing is, Mumbo isn't as slick as he thought. Grunty sees him running and decides to follow him, casting spells as she goes. Once Mumbo makes it back inside, he tells Banjo, Kazooie, and Bottles that Gruntilda is coming and they need to run. Hearing this news, Banjo hits the ground running, but Bottles, being the stubborn mole he is, decides to stay and is affected by the blast. The 3 witches enter the drill and leave behind a bunch of enemies in their place. They also leave Cucko behind, which, I'm not gonna lie, I felt kinda bad. Back outside the Bird and Bear's house, we can see the effects of Grunty's powers. The house is obviously damaged, and Bottles is nowhere to be found. That is until a black figure emerges from inside the house and drops down on the floor. Grunty literally cooked with that last spell, and we get confirmation that Bottles is actually dead. Oh, and nobody cares. Genuinely. Kazooie literally says it's fine because he wasn't the favorite in Banjo Kazooie. I mean, she didn't lie, but time and place. Time and place. From here, Banjo and Kazooie make their way to fight Gruntilda for a second time, and to avenge their dead friend. On the flip side, Grunty's motives are similar to the first game. She wants a better, more attractive body, and is using real people to achieve that goal. Right off the bat, there's a notable tone shift. Banjo Kazooie was visually light and goofy, whereas Banjo Tooie is a lot darker visually and story-wise. I mean, Bottles got killed within the first 10 minutes for goodness sake. Banjo Tooie still does have a lot of humor, it's just a darker and more twisted sense of humor, which I actually really liked. After running around Spiral Mountain and entering Jinjo Village, we are able to speak to our Lord and Savior, Master Jiggy Wiggy. Jiggy Wiggy is the one that grants us access to the different worlds, and in order to receive access, you must have enough Jiggies and complete a moving puzzle. These moving puzzles are kind of fun and a bit more interesting than just placing singular puzzle pieces. The worlds in Banjo Tooie feel a lot more interconnected, as you can literally travel from world to world within the worlds, and the entrance to them blends in a lot more with the scenery. With the first part of the story out of the way, let's quickly jump into how I feel about each world and how I would rank them, starting off with the first level. Mayan Temple. Mayan Temple is the first world of the game and takes place on a Mayan-inspired mountainside. The level isn't too big, but there's still a ton to do. From completing a maze that has the controls of a first-person shooter game, all the way up to competing in a soccer or football tournament as this little stone guy. The only Jiggies I really wasn't a fan of were the ones that have you using the sneak mechanic. It took 50 million tries to complete due to poor controls, and you need to do this for 2 separate Jiggies. This level also introduces some new moves, such as Egg Aim, Regal Blaster, and Grip Grab, all of which are extremely useful for the rest of the game. And for that, I give it 2.5 Mumbo tokens out of 5, even though Mumbo tokens aren't in this game. Glitter Gulch Mine. Here is where I finally learned about widescreen mode. Glitter Gulch Mine is the second level, and, well, takes place in a literal mine. The theming is consistent in the Jiggies you get. I mean, you literally have to save a canary named Mary, you fight Old King Cole over ownership for his train, and explore multiple dark caves. This level is pretty inoffensive, and the Jiggies aren't particularly hard to get. You can even cheese some of them if you really want to. For example, the Jiggy in the Power Hut. You're supposed to backtrack for this, which, don't worry, we'll talk about backtracking more in depth later, but since I could clearly see the outlines of the planks of wood on my TV, I just decided to get it early. Another backtracking jiggy is reuniting Bullion Bill and Dilberta, who may or may not be in a relationship. You know, based on the pet names and the painting on the wall, I don't even want to think about the logistics of that. All that being said, this was a decent level. I give it 3.8 Mumbo tokens out of 5. Witchy World. I always heard this was a fan favorite, and I can kind of see why. Witchy World is essentially a giant theme park that's trying to kill you. I'm joking, but I'm also not. In this theme park, Banjo collects jiggies by visiting different parts of the park and their attractions. There's bumper cars, tightrope walking, a test of strength, a space shooter game, and there's even a bouncy castle. All of these attractions are surrounding Konga's Big Top, where once you collect 4 tickets and go inside, you have to poke holes in this strange wobbly inflatable thing. That's literally in its title card. If this isn't your first video of mine, then you would know I hate anything where you have to aim properly, but this fight was actually pretty enjoyable. The same cannot be said for the Saucer of Peril, however. That legitimately took me 30 minutes, and I got 499 points out of the needed 500 points multiple times. I would give this level 4 Mumbo tokens out of 5. Jolly Roger's Lagoon. Where do I even begin? This level is pretty decent. As the level takes place near a lagoon, you can bet your bottom dollar there will be a lot of swimming. And oh boy, will you need to swim like your life depends on it. Most jiggies are found underwater, and to get them you typically need to shoot eggs, torpedoes, and even Kazooie herself. That being said, the camera angle, shooting, and being underwater all kind of made me dread getting all the underwater jiggies. On land, however, I enjoyed the scenery and the characters. I mean, you have Pano, a stubborn money-loving pawnbroker, Jolly Roger, a frog that runs an inn serving up salty dumplings, and seaman surprise. Yeah, I think I have to pass on that. There's also these pig children that have been swimming in polluted water, and one of them now has a third arm. So yeah, very interesting characters. This was a level that despite the jiggies being a little annoying to get, I actually really liked. I give this level 3.2 Mumbo tokens out of 5. Pterodactyland. Ah yes, a land before time. Pterodactyland is a land filled with dinosaurs and is named after a daddy pterodactyl named Terry. I really like this level's diversity. Most levels felt like they require a lot of shooting just to get jiggies, and while you definitely need that skill in this world, it's not the only skill. In this level, you use the split pad pretty often, whether it's utilizing Kazooie to hatch eggs, or Banjo and his backpack to lug around an overweight bird or dinosaur. It's all just very fun. The characters in this world are also super memorable. For example, the Styracosaurus family. You will need to help a Mamasaurus with her 3 children, Scrut, Scrit, and Scrat. Scrut ran away to Witchy World and you need to bring her back. Scrit is sick and needs Mumbo's magic to heal him. And Scrat is just small and needs Mumbo's magic to make him big again and apparently get a girlfriend. I don't know, her words, not mine. I thoroughly enjoyed this level, and I think it's one of my favorites. I give it 4.5 Mumbo tokens out of 5. Grunty Industries. Honestly, I'm still conflicted about how I feel about this world. Banjo and Kazooie explore Grunty's factory, and it's filled with a bunch of factory-related tasks, such as changing batteries, cleaning the uniforms of a couple rabbit employees, and even shooting poop off sewer vents. Yes, you heard that correctly. There's 5 floors, and getting to each floor is a challenge in and of itself, especially when navigating with the transformation for this level, which is a washer machine. The floors can be a bit hard to remember and navigate efficiently, but I also think that's part of the fun. This world doesn't have too many standout characters in my opinion, minus the rabbits and the boss for this level. This world also took forever to complete. Like from here on out, that's just the standard. All that being said, for right now, I would give it a calm 3 Mumbo tokens out of 5. Hayfire Peaks. This world consists of both fire and ice. The fire side of the island contains a ton of lava, molten rock, and even a fire-breathing dragon. That's upset that you're not the pizza delivery guy. Okay. The ice side is my favorite side and consists of ice cubes, aliens, and even Bigfoot, or Bigafoot. The ice side is my favorite just because it feels a lot more open and is a lot less confusing to navigate. It also feels like the more memorable characters are on this side. For example, you have to rescue a frozen alien dad and his 3 children. This actually connects to a previous mission from Jolly Roger's Lagoon, which I thought was really cool. There's also the ice dragon named Chilly Willy, who thinks you're the pizza delivery guy and vows to avenge his fire-breathing brother, Chilly Billy, who, as you know, you kind of roughed him up earlier. Oh, and of course I have to mention everyone's favorite camel, Gobi, has finally made it to the lava world. It only took 2 years and 2 games. Overall, I definitely think this was my favorite level. This is really the turning point in the game where you're forced to use all the moves you've learned so far. I give it 5 Mumbo tokens out of 5. Cloud Cuckoo Land. I think I like this level. This world takes place above the clouds and is intended to be a bit wacky. I honestly don't think there are too many wacky or zany characters in Jiggies, but that's just the vibe it gives off. Since it's above the clouds, there's a lot of islands you can traverse by flower, flypad, or even a bumblebee transformation. This level has a wide variety of Jiggies, ranging from beating Mr. Fit in a triathlon, opening a safe, shooting eyeball plants, all the way up to defeating a Mumbo impersonator named Minji Jongo, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I know the race with Canary Mary is a bit infamous in this world, so I didn't even try to attempt it. Getting around the level is pretty easy, especially since the center makes all the directions pretty accessible. All in all, a pretty good level. I give it 3.5 Mumbo tokens out of 5. With all the worlds completed, it is now time to face Grunty head-on. Banjo makes his way to Cauldron's Keep. Inside the tower, we are greeted by Klungo, and his fight isn't too different from the previous 2. Defeating him sends him running, while he complains about how terrible Grunty is as an employer. I mean, no pay and no days off is kind of insane. Next, we meet Grunty. And like the first game, there's a game show. Answer trivia questions about the game, and try not to get eliminated. Banjo competes against Grunty's sisters, Mingella and Blabelda. And honestly, they're really not that hard to beat when they're not cheating. If you're successful, Grunty will claim something is wrong with the scoring system, and Kazooie recommends she runs off before they beat her bony butt. Gruntilda escapes through the open door, and Banjo and Kazooie follow behind. Credits. No, seriously, the credits roll for about 5 minutes. But of course, the game can't really end without a fight, so the game resumes with Banjo and Kazooie trying to reverse the BOB's settings with the encouragement of jam jars. Kazooie presses some buttons and sets off the ray gun. This causes King Jingling to become unzombified and Bottles to become undead. Bottles finally makes it to dinner and is reunited with his family. And it's kind of cute, I can't lie. Oh, and Klungo joins King Jingling and actually admires our bravery. I genuinely find Klungo to be adorable. While everyone is partying, Banjo and Kazooie head to the top of Cauldron's Keep, where Gruntilda awaits. Grunty will ask you questions, and if you get them right, she'll go easier on you. Avoid any lasers from the drill, and shoot her with some eggs. Halfway through, you'll need Clockwork Kazooie to destroy a battery inside the drill, and we officially move on to Phase 2. Gruntilda is throwing the book at you. She's constantly shooting at you, summoning minions, releasing toxic gas, and even using her most powerful spell. A spell in which she drops and accidentally blows herself up in the process. Well, this is awkward. Banjo and Kazooie make their way to Bottle's party, where they find out it's over and Klungo ate all the food. Great. Instead, the gang goes outside to play Kick Around, a game in which they kick around Grunty's head. This is extremely morbid. Jam Jars is literally doing tricks with it. What? But yeah, that's the end of the game. In general, this game pretty much plays like Banjo Kazooie. Story-wise, it follows the same pattern. All of the important story progression happens at the very beginning and the very end. You need a certain amount of Jiggies to unlock the next world and the final door. All the moves from the last game are here as well, and they even use the same buttons. This game does add a couple new moves though, and you actually keep learning new moves until the very end of the game. This varies from the previous game, which stops giving you new moves about halfway through. In Banjo Kazooie, you learn new moves from Bottles, but you know, Bottles is a bit busy in this game. So instead, you learn new moves from his brother Jam Jars, and these moves are extremely helpful. Some of my favorites are using the Split Pad, which allows Banjo and Kazooie to split up to complete different missions, Glide, which is a Kazooie exclusive move that makes getting around 10 times easier. And an honorable mention, Snooze Pack, a Banjo exclusive move that allows Banjo to nap and replenish his energy. Banjo Tooie forces you to remember and use a ton of moves, and I'm not gonna lie, I always get the button combinations mixed up. Even in the world area, Tooie functions the same as its predecessor, with even bigger and more complex worlds. At first, the worlds are indistinguishable from Banjo Kazooie. It's not until about halfway through, like around Jolly Roger's Lagoon or Pterodactyl Land, that the levels start to feel massive, complex, and pretty time-consuming. Traversing these worlds are made easier through the use of warp pads, but still, even with warp pads, it can still be a bit tedious getting from place to place. Most worlds contain similar types of jiggies, you know, a jiggy for beating a boss, a jiggy for helping someone out, a jiggy that requires Mumbo's help, yada yada. Speaking of Mumbo, Mumbo actually plays a big part in this game. He helps us out quite a bit by casting different types of magic spells, and since he has a lot more screen time, there's also a noticeable shift in character between the first and second game. In Banjo Kazooie, Mumbo was a lot more mysterious. Like, there was always speculation about him, who and what he is, but in this game, he's definitely not as mysterious and a lot more wacky. I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, but I do miss when he wasn't so goofy. He's also in a one-sided beef with a new character called Humbawamba, who is also a shaman. A Shaw woman? I'm not 100% sure why she hates him, but I guess she views Mumbo as competition. I don't know. It seems personal. There's also a ton of shooting related jiggies. There's at least one per world, and I was honestly surprised at how many jiggies you get by shooting. I'm not sure where the developers were going with this. There's multiple first-person shooter minigames, which honestly kind of sucks. At least on the N64 version of the game. Aiming is incredibly annoying, as you cannot move vertically and horizontally at the same time. This leaves you open to attacks, and is just incredibly frustrating. Sometimes the best way to complete these challenges is spinning in a circle and shooting recklessly. I'm sick just looking at this footage. Another type of jiggy are the ones you need to backtrack for, sometimes even forcing you to backtrack through multiple levels for a single jiggy. All levels in the game are interconnected, like you can literally make your way through all the levels without ever leaving or stepping foot in the main area of the game. Sometimes a jiggy will require a move you get later on to complete, or you need to complete actions in another world to affect the current world. A good example of this is the Toxic Pool Jiggy in Jolly Roger's Lagoon. In order to help the pig children, you need to make your way to Hayfire Peaks and Cloud Cuckoo Land and trigger a series of events to stop the toxic waste and to warm up the pool to a reasonable temperature. I would assume backtracking could be a little tedious for some people, and is probably something people point to when talking about why this game may not be as good as Banjo Kazooie. But honestly, I kind of looked forward to going back and finally being able to collect a jiggy that was previously inaccessible. However, I can definitely see this being a lot more annoying on a second, third, and even a fourth playthrough. I can also speak to some of the random thoughts I had about this game as well. Banjo Tooie is definitely a bit harder than Banjo Kazooie, but it also has some aspects that make it easier. For example, if you actually utilize the Cheeto pages, you can get something called Fall Proof and Honeyback. Fall Proof allows Banjo and Kazooie not to take fall damage, and Honeyback replenishes your health automatically. This pretty much makes Banjo and Kazooie invincible towards the end of the game. You can turn these features off if you want, but they're definitely OP. I've also noticed there's no real incentive to stay alive, at least within the game. Your notes stay with you even after death, so no more having to recollect notes. Trust me, I was thrilled to see this. I honestly felt like this game encourages suicide. Like, if I knew I could warp back to a specific point and was too lazy to walk back, I would just jump off a cliff or get hurt by enemies. There's really no downside to dying in this game, which I actually really liked. Overall, I really did enjoy Banjo Tooie. I still prefer Banjo Kazooie, but I think it's because Banjo Tooie requires a lot more involvement and brain power. You cannot passively play the game, as there are a lot of interconnected worlds and jiggies. I tried to go into this game with an open mind, as I heard some people saying it wasn't as good as the first one. But honestly, I think it was pretty on par with Banjo Kazooie. It just depends on what you personally value within a game, but it's not bad at all. With that being said, Banjo Tooie is still an amazing game that definitely deserves its flowers. Let me know what you think of Banjo Tooie, and if you prefer it over the original. As always, my name is Andy, and I hope to see you in the next video.